And thanks for joining us on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television AIT. Welcome to the Signature Show. My name is Mwabozi Njoko, and in this edition of this program this Sunday, coup in Burkina Faso is the virus of the military, thinking that they have all the answers to problems, national problems, returning to West Africa. Nigerian political parties, are they handing their functions to the Nigerian judiciary? Muhammadu Buhari postpones the evil day, leaves removal of fuel subsidy to incoming government. Plus, our thank you segment, which has become so hugely popular, honestly I didn't know, among our many music lovers. And just stay with us and enjoy this very full and interesting package. When the issues matter and the need to know matters.
The chief of staff of Nigeria couldn't go to his village because it was being occupied by Boko Haram.
Politicians and political parties have massively used money to buy votes and to change the course of electoral direction.
You will also remember the very APC itself set up a Rufai committee recommending structuring doesn't mean anything. Go back to federalism.
Or the fun and the fair to relieve everyday care.
Life is a riddle, my son. The land bled when Uvorawen was put in shackles. Heaven wept when Saruwiwa was laid to rest.
Everything comes with the Judge Tufoni. Everything comes with who I am.
The Signature Show, your show that matters, on AIT every Sunday at 2 p.m. Now, it was first reports of gunshots heard in the military barracks in Ouagadougou, the Burkina Faso capital, which of course the government denied was a military push. And then the military itself issuing a statement announcing a takeover and ending all military, economic, and diplomatic relations with France. They subsequently denied cutting of ties with France, but confirmed taking over power. Let's look at it. Democracy in West Africa has been stupid, wasteful, acrimonious, divisive, and unprogressive. There's no doubt about that. But military governments are not just worse. They hold the people down, create quasi-monarchies, blunt intellectual and human development, and do not move the society any inch forward. Democracy in West Africa, yes, has recruited many fools and pretenders. It has also allowed men of knowledge and noble and progressive intentions to come in. With time, practice, and patience, one of such men of knowledge, good intentions, and integrity will come into power. That is the best option for Nigeria. West Africa and Africa are not boots and guns. And this takes me on to Nigeria's political parties. What is their role in our democratic dispensation? They are supposed to be the mechanism for creating political values, principles, and philosophies. Through the parties, Nigerians are supposed to be exposed and made to endorse at elections governance house and means to those house. From these house and means to them, the electorate will begin to make choices. And the parties themselves can throw up candidates, personalities who understand, believe, and can deliver governance based on those indicators. But what do Nigerians get from their political parties today? Mere vehicles of flotsams and jetsams, clowns and pretenders, and questionable characters to come to power. And then the harvest of rancorous politicking that ends in the hands of the judiciary. This Sunday, correspondent Chibueze Obi takes a look at this issue in a special report.
Since the return to democracy in 1999, Nigeria's political parties have witnessed crisis Most of the crises arise as a result of rancorous recruitment process. The choice of candidates results in the emergence of factions within the parties. Some of these crises also surface due to attempts by some members of the party to impose candidates in total disregard for party's rules and regulations. Nigeria's political parties also witness situations where some wealthy members deploy their wealth to subvert the party rules and processes.
Majorly, the cause of intra-party crisis in Nigeria is about personal interest, because every political party have a constitution that guides its operation, and by that constitution, it tells you on how to go about your activities, how to conduct primaries, how to discipline your members, how to go about selecting escorts of the party. But often, because of personal interest and then selfish interest too, some people feel they've established themselves within the party. So because of their establishment within the party, they must always have their way. If you are going to come up with candidates, they will tell you, look, I'm the godfather, I must bring my own candidate. So in that circumstances, certainly interests will be clashing, and the clash of those personal interests results into crisis.
These actions, however, result to intra-party divisions, with many laying claim to the same post and therefore approach the cause to seek interpretation of party rules and get justice.
Political parties are meant to go to court where there is an outright breach of their constitution, or outright breach of the provisions of the INEC, or outright breach of the provision of the constitution, which is the ground norm. So once there is a breach of an established or extant law, certainly the political party, whoever is aggrieved as a party, the best place to ventilate his grievances is the court.
The situation puts the judiciary in a position where it becomes the decider of party candidates for various positions. The judiciary is definitely innocent of any accusation of attempt to usurp the function of political parties. But does the situation not amount to the parties failing in their responsibilities and handing them to the courts? Again, can the candidates who emerge through these court pronouncements truly represent the political parties? Another challenge is that leaders and candidates who emerge through court verdict may not be the perfect choice of the members of the political party, which may therefore cost the political party the elections.
Someone that is not a popular candidate can win election. It is the one that is a popular candidate will win the election. And our ears are always on the ground, or back on the ground. That is the grassroots, what the grassroots says. Because it is what the grassroots says is what determines democracy. Because when it loots them, when it loots the party itself will no longer have a credible candidate to win election.
The political parties who fail to produce their flag bearers through the party's procedure and processes and have their candidates emerge through judicial intervention may end up producing leaders who either do not buy into the philosophy of the parties or do not even understand it. Such a situation stunts the growth of political parties as institutions for political growth, education, and recruitment into a particular philosophy and principle of governance.
Most times, what causes them, there are some people that they are the interlopers, political interlopers. These political interlopers are some people, they will wait until when the party machineries has been organized. They will just come and use their money to hijack the party. Do you understand me? By so doing, you start having this crisis, because the people that have been in the party that have been nursing the ambition knows the people that are working with them. Then this person that just come into the party and hijack the power doesn't know the grassroots, doesn't know the members of the members of the party. That is where the conflicts come in.
Another challenge is that the crisis in the political parties and the constant approach of the court expose the cause to avoidable pressure. This could make desperate politicians seek to compromise the cause to get what they want, undermining the integrity of the cause, and also undermining the trust and confidence of electorate in the electoral process.
You know, judiciary this time, people do not trust the judiciary, even ordinary people on the street. You see, what they do, what the judiciaries do now is that they are like a marketplace. He that pays pays the bigger price, it carries the goods. And do you understand me? It is said, he that pays the piper, he takes the tune.
If Nigeria's political parties are to serve their purpose as institutions for leadership recruitment, they must work to reduce internal wranglings, respect their own selection processes, and end the spate of litigations which tend to make the cause the final decider of the outcome of political processes in Nigeria. In Abuja, I am Chibueze Obi for Signature Show.
While President Muhammadu Buhari is portrayed to Nigerians as a man of steel and conviction, and the president says he is concerned that fuel scarcity or fuel subsidy in Nigeria is a scam, and he has insisted that the scam must end. Now, at a time when it matters most, with Nigeria broke and going around cap in hand asking for loans, and there is a telling need to end the fuel subsidy scam to save Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, the man of steel and conviction, turned stale. He postponed the evil day so that APC can commandeer another control of governance at the center. The decision to postpone removal of fuel subsidy for another 18 months when Buhari would have left office, is it not postponing the evil day and running away from a problem? Please join me in our special interview this Sunday. It is the focus of our conversation. In the middle 1970s, the Nigerian military federal government, in reaction to the global great inflation which caused worldwide increase in energy prices, took legal steps to control prices of essential products in the country. One such step was the promulgation of the Regulatory Price Control Edict of 1977. Before then, in 1975, the military government had enacted Decree 9 of 1975, which established the Petroleum Equalization Fund Management Board. The Petroleum Equalization Fund Decree, which was amended by Decree 32 of 1989, was born out of a policy to make the cost of petroleum products uniform across Nigeria. Before these leftist military laws, petroleum products were cheaper in the south and subsequently in the Kaduna axis, where the refineries were closer to the markets. The Petroleum Equalization Fund was resourced by a payment of 7.51 kobo by the government for every liter of petrol or diesel sold in Nigeria, and the amount realized was used as bridging fund paid to the marketers for transporting petroleum products to far-flung markets. This bridging fund is what is called petroleum subsidy. The Nigerian government has since stopped the subsidy on diesel, remaining the premium motor spirit, petrol. Available statistics show that between 2006 and 2018, Nigeria spent $24.5 billion or 10 trillion naira on petroleum subsidy. In 2018 only, Nigeria spent 722 billion naira on petroleum subsidy, while in 2019 and 2020, the country spent 3 trillion naira on the same subsidy. Governments over time in Nigeria have made faint-hearted effort to stop subsidy on petroleum products, a policy that has enabled opposition, labor, and petroleum products marketers to hold the government hostage. Between 1979 and 1983, the civilian government of President Shehu Shagari toyed with reduction of subsidy, increasing pump price of petrol from 15.3 kobo per liter to 20 kobo. In 1986, military president Ibrahim Babangida, under pressure from the International Monetary Fund in a policy of partial removal of subsidy, increased pump price of petrol from 20 kobo to 39 kobo. It was one of the policies in his structural adjustment program recommended by the IMF. Massive demonstrations, civil disobedience, and threats of a military push followed that removal of subsidy under SAP. Many analysts say that policy played a major role in forcing Babangida to relinquish power. It was not until 2012 that a major policy shift was contemplated by any Nigerian government away from retaining subsidy. In January of 2012, the Goodluck Jonathan administration, which had put in place a number of policies to create economic and social benefits from the savings from removal of subsidy, decided to remove subsidy on petrol once and for all. After the government was almost brought down by opponents of the policy, it cut the subsidy by just 30%. It is the remaining 70% that is the burden which the Buhari administration has been battling with. Twice, it has tabled its intention to free the nation from the subsidy burden. Twice, it has buckled. Then the government succeeded in enacting the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, which by the end of February 2022 would have deregulated Nigeria's petroleum industry, a euphemism for removal of fuel subsidy. The act would also have scrapped a number of regulatory agencies which administer the Petroleum Equalization Fund. And just last week, the government announced that it will seek an amendment to the Petroleum Industry Act to enable it once again extend the life of petroleum subsidy another 18 months, postponing the evil day. The question is, for how long can Nigeria bear the burden, indeed, the back-breaking burden of petrol subsidy? Hello, let me welcome you to the conversation segment of the Signature Show this Sunday. Last week, fuel queues emerged suddenly in Abuja and in Lagos. I cannot speak of what happened in Port Harcourt. But why did the fuel queues come back? Simple. Nigerians expected that the government would remove subsidy on petrol. By the way, by the provision of the Petroleum Industry Act, deregulation of the oil industry is supposed to start at the end of February. I call it a euphemism for removal of subsidy. But the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timi Silva, speaking to reporters, said Nigeria would not, for now, remove petroleum subsidy. As a matter of fact, he said, the government was asking for an 18-month extension within which the subsidy will remain. Now the government is going to the National Assembly to ask for an amendment to the PIA Act, that is Petroleum Industry Act, so that the February date will not be compelling on the government to deregulate and therefore remove subsidy. Questions arise which I'm not very competent to provide answers to. So this afternoon, I'm conversing with first a lawyer, an oil industry player who has suddenly become, who wants to serve. He's not a politician of your kind. He wants to serve. Madaki Ame. Madaki, you're welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Chief Mabedi.
Incidentally, Madaki is a lawyer, as I said, but I also need a figures person on this program. So, joining by Zoom this afternoon is Nick Agule. Nick Agule is a chartered accountant. He's worked with Shell. He's worked with Chevron. He's worked with BP. Just in case you don't know what BP is, what we used to call British Petroleum, but their brand now is just BP. Nick, let me welcome you to the conversation.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, as I said, Nick is joining us via Zoom. Madaki, you are here. The concept of subsidy in our kind of economy. Is it sensible?
Yeah, thank you very much. There are many things that happen in Nigeria that are completely not sensible. You know, subsidy is definitely one of them. Subsidy of petrol is one of them. We've been running this subsidy regime, you know, for many years, and we haven't seen the impact on the economy in a positive way. You know, Nigeria is a very amazing country where people insist on doing the wrong thing, and then they insist on it with such vigor, you know, that it becomes policy and everybody just throws their arms up in the air. That is all we can say about the subsidy thing. You know, it's completely anachronistic, it's completely unnecessary, and it's completely destructive of an economy such as ours, where the government does not earn enough, you know, and then you just claim that you're putting money in people's pockets to enable them to buy petrol for their cars to drive around. To what end? We're not subsidizing food, we're not subsidizing education, we're not subsidizing healthcare. These are the things that matter to human beings, you know, from day to day. But to say, let's give you enough money to put petrol in your car, to go where? How many Nigerians own cars? This is actually shameful, you know, and I'm embarrassed that the government continues to kick the can down the road instead of doing the right thing. And there are many ways to do the right thing, you know, as we'll probably discuss in the course of this conversation.
Yeah, let me come to you here. Some thing that sounds logical, fairness. The government is trying to be considerate and fair to all its citizens. It appears unfair that for the same product, the same citizens in different locations pay different prices.
Yeah, sure. That's the way the world works. You know, those who live closer to the source of supply of any product definitely have to pay less than those who stay farther away. That it happens to yams. In Benue, for instance, if you go to my village right now, you can buy a tuber of yam for 150 naira. If you come to Abuja, the same tuber of yam of that day, it takes only 3 hours to drive from Benue from my village in Adoka to Abuja, by the way. There's that same tuber of yam, you can buy it for like 600 naira. That is just by putting it in the boot of your car and bringing it, you know, out of the boot of your car. So, and the same happens for gari, the same happens for fish, you know, the same happens for virtually everything, you know. So, I don't know what the magic about petrol is, you know, and why it is so touchy, and you know, and why, you know, government have been doing this for years and they cannot see that this is actually destroying the economy. You know, they see it obviously, but you know, I think because a lot of people are feeding fat on this, and the figures for subsidy just keeps doubling every time. The last time I heard about subsidy, it was 1.5 trillion a year. But the provision they're asking the National Assembly to make now for subsidy for the next 18 months is 3 trillion. Last year, the federal government earned, you know, the actual earnings of this country was just about 5.2 trillion naira. And then you're using more than half of that, you know, to subsidize petrol for people to put in their tanks. You know, it's such a corrupt sleaze, you know, it's actually almost sickening. You get the point. But, you know, there's a larger way to look at the subsidy issue. We need to ask ourselves whether there indeed is a subsidy. My position has always been, and this has been on for many years. You know, I remember when I was doing the interview to join Arthur Anderson in 1994, you know, the issue cropped up, you know, whether we're subsidizing petrol or not. And I maintained that position at the time, and I maintain again that whatever they call subsidy today is actually the product of inefficiency, incompetence, corruption, and, you know, crass either ignorance or deliberate, you know, mischief on the part of government. Because, you know, I can't understand where the subsidy is coming from. Subsidy, as we practice it in this country right now, is a self-inflicted injury, which can be removed tomorrow if we have the political and the economic will to do what is right. And again, I keep saying it, and I've been saying this since 2012, you know, when we had the first subsidy strike in this country. You know, when the National Assembly was probing the issue of subsidy, and then there was a lot of outcry. You know, I think Jonathan was the president at the time. You know, I've been saying it that subsidy the removal of subsidy need not lead to an increase in the pump price of petrol.
Like I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come because very important when we begin to seek solutions and when we begin to query really whether there's a subsidy or not. Nick, if you are hearing me now, over the years, do you think Nigerians really have benefited from fuel subsidy?
Thank you very much for that question. Over the years, the people who have benefited from subsidy are the rich men and women of Nigeria who have on average 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 cars. You drive into some estates and you will see the number of cars parked in the forecourt of the houses. You will think they are actually car dealers, but they are not car dealers. They are actually having this array of cars, and these are no small cars. These cars are big cars that guzzle petrol up and down. These people drive in convoys. These are the beneficiaries. The other beneficiaries of fuel subsidy are the West African countries. Today, we are being told that about 70 million liters of petrol is consumed in Nigeria every day. This figure was a few years ago. And we know very well that the number of cars on Nigerian roads have not doubled. So about 30 to 40 million liters of this petrol is simply going across our borders, smuggled into West African countries. The real people who should be benefiting from subsidy, the poor of Nigeria, are not benefiting because one, they don't have cars. You can go to a village and the entire village, there's nobody with a car in that village. Number two, the poor, the fuel the poor use is kerosene, and the subsidy on kerosene has long been removed. Also, the poor are ferried in mass transit, buses, trains, boats, trucks, and all these vehicles use diesel. And because the price of diesel has since been deregulated, the fares that the poor pay has already been escalated to account for the deregulation. So if you look at this fuel subsidy issue critically, you will find out that Nigeria is actually running from the poor to fund the lifestyle of rich.
Well, Madaki, you can see we're having challenge with Nick's signal. There's an important point he's made there, and that is that we're taking from the poor who ought to really benefit, but who don't benefit, to fund the lifestyle of the rich. We're taking from the poor who are not benefiting to fund the pockets of the smugglers. But why is it that each effort to remove subsidy, organized labor, which says it represents the poor masses of Nigeria, kick? Is that as a result of lack of understanding, and therefore we in the media are not educating properly? Or any other challenge you can see?
Well, honestly, it beats my imagination. But having been a unionist myself at some point in my career, you know, I used to be Penderson Vice Chairman in Shell when I was there. You know, I think there is also a desire by unionists to be seen to be relevant. So when the union movement begins to see itself as being taken for granted or ignored in some things, you know, they like to play to the gallery, you know, just so that their members know that they're still important. And that's why, you know, every time they're threatening to strike or to move, you know, against the government or whatever the management of the organization, that, you know, that unionizing is. You know, so that's the way I see it, you know, quite frankly, because from a reasonable perspective, you know, nobody can argue that the petrol subsidy as we have it currently makes sense. You know, you have a car, you go to the petrol station, buy petrol like any other product at the price that is available to be paid, you know, and then you go away. It's just like you have a diesel generator, and then you go and insist that you must buy, you know, at a certain price because you can't afford it at a higher price. So if the government could do it for diesel, which is actually more useful to the economy than petrol, because more, cheaper,
more industrial machines.
cheaper diesel will translate to cheaper prices in of things that are produced industrially and so on. Kerosene, which most of our people use to cook their food, is also allegedly deregulated and so has become more expensive. But my grouse about subsidy is not even the fact of the pricing. It is the concept around it. The government cannot simply sit down in their warped sense of benevolence and decide that instead of food to be cheaper, petrol should be cheaper. You know what I mean? We don't drink petrol. We don't. So I can't follow the thought process. And so for it to be so difficult for them to come to a decision to do what is right by petroleum products, and I think that right now diesel is overpriced, DPK, which is kerosene, is overpriced. Because if you apply the right principles of petroleum economics, these products should not be priced so differently. So somebody somewhere is definitely benefiting financially heavily on a daily basis from this so-called subsidy. And they have formed a very strong cartel that is holding this country by the jugular and draining, as it is now, 55% of the national budget, where most of it is even borrowed. If it was money that was available somewhere, from our earnings, I wouldn't have a problem. But to subsidize petrol, they are now having to borrow money in order to give to us to put petrol in our cars. It's the most absurd kind of economic reason that I can never imagine. Why government is able to sustain it and to sustain the lie, and continue to defend it to themselves, and they can sleep well at night, is something that actually bothers me to high heavens.
Let me reason for the government. A government exists to serve the people, and a government cannot serve a dead people. No matter the argument we are making, let us take Lagos and Abuja as a simple example. Most of the commuting in Lagos is with taxis, cars, downfall, buses. The big buses that use diesel are not even 1/4 of these small means of commuting. And most of them use petrol. The same thing in Abuja. Let me say, I cannot say for fact, the same thing in Kano, the same thing in Port Harcourt. It sounds to me, honestly, reasonable that government should do something about it. But the question is, each time the government has promised to remove subsidy and use the gains of subsidy to alleviate the suffering of these people I've spoken about now, provide better transport services that will now use the diesel that is available in their numbers. I don't need to drive my car from my house to my office if there was a good transport, decent transport service. Government doesn't do that. Making the citizen to ask questions and therefore insist on returning subsidy. Doesn't this sound logical?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all to me. Because the fact that there are many vehicles, it's just like you go to New York City. I'm sure there are more cars on the road in New York City or in the city of Beijing, or in the city of Guangzhou or in the city of London than there are in any of these cities that you have just mentioned. But the government doesn't come and say, well, I think the price of petrol is too much for you to pay, so, come and take a handout to buy petrol in your cars. We would rather do that for healthcare. We would rather do that for education, where we have been thrown under the bus, where the private, most of the schools are privately owned anyway. And they can come up with any amount of money as the school fees, and the Ministry of Education does nothing about it. So why are we not subsidizing education, which is where the future of our country lies? Why are we not subsidizing healthcare, which is what keeps us alive? Why are we not subsidizing food, which we must eat at least twice a day, even if you are a madman? So we are here in the country where the government believes that the benevolence they can show is to allege that they are putting money in our pockets to enable us to buy petrol for our cars, which we cannot even afford. How many Nigerians can afford cars? And again, I still make this point, that in talking about subsidy, and why I believe clearly that there's no subsidy, people are just pocketing money that belongs, to the common patrimony. In talking about subsidy has always been a self-inflicted injury in this country. If we apply the right principles, I keep saying it, there's no reason why we should, even at today's, in today's, economic indices, exchange rate, price of crude in the international market, whatever the indices you want to use, there's no reason why petrol, a liter of petrol, a liter of diesel, a liter of kerosene should be anything more than between 100 naira and 120 naira per liter. And this knowledge exists. Since 2012, I've spent time, with my team of consultants to study the Nigerian oil and gas industry, especially as it relates to petroleum pricing. And it is very simple. The blunder is actually so easy to see that it's actually shameful. That, those who claim to be, the technocrats running the industry have then either decided to be deliberately illiterate and cannot see it, or they're just being mischievous and they're just inflicting perpetual pain on the country. It got to a point where I had to go, because when I tried to express these ideas and operationalize it, I had to go to, and I was told that, that we needed a big name behind the idea for it to work. I had to go to KPMG, the best consulting firm that you can find in the world. And I said, I used to work there, when it was at Anderson. And I discussed the model with them. We challenged it for half a day with the best of the brains in KPMG. And we agreed that this will work anyhow you turn it around. You know the point. And this will not take a month, to implement. And then we will level the price of petroleum products at anything between, 100 naira and 120 naira, no more. Because, you apply the right principles. We produce crude oil, for God's sake. As it is right now, crude oil is 70% of the price of the pump, the price of the liter at the pump. So why would you inflict an injury on yourself? You get the point. Here is a clearly self-inflicted injury on account of people who are suffering from, brain blockage, in my view. You get the point. This is very easy.
Now, Madaki, look, the bigger issue now is the government postponing the evil day?
Yes, the government is clearly kicking the can down the road. And our governments in Nigeria have always been known to kick the can down the road. Every responsible government faced with a problem is supposed to come up with a solution and deal with it. That's why we elect people into office. But here we are, a very cowardly government, that cannot take a decision on absolutely anything. You get the point? So when faced with a challenge, they look around the perimeter. Now we are entering an election season. And they know that, they will be savaged at the polls if they dare do anything to it, if they dare make themselves any more unpopular. The government is already sufficiently unpopular as it is. So I'm sure that they are, this kicking the can down the road, this 3 trillion naira bill is actually, I view it in two ways. First of all, it's a self-seeking, kicking the can down the road by the APC government, where they say, well, in 18 months' time, the government would have changed anyway. So let that problem be the problem of the next government and let them deal with it the way they want. It's completely shameful because I remember very clearly in 2014, when Buhari was contesting and campaigning for this position, the APC position at the time, and it's on video. In fact, with Buhari himself being interviewed by the media, he was much more eloquent in interviews then than now. And he was eloquently positing, that subsidy is a scam and that this country has no business with doing anything subsidy. As soon as it comes, subsidy will be eliminated and the country will move ahead because the scam will end. 7 years down the road in his government, we are still in that scam and he's still, not ashamed of it. In a proper country where things work well, the government ought to resign on account of the fact that they cannot deal with the issue of subsidy. Because subsidy is the biggest drain pipe on the resources of this country. And so any government that comes and cannot grapple with it within the first 3 to 6 months actually ought to be shown the way out. But we are here, there is no consequence management for anything in Nigeria, and that is why we keep kicking the can down the road on a daily basis. The second reason why there is subsidy, why we are increasing the subsidy bill by almost 100%, is to, in my view, be able to fund the electoral expenses, of the APC government. I believe very strongly that, the government is going to rely on the sleaze from the subsidy, the alleged subsidy, to finance the campaigns for their party. Because we all know that electioneering in Nigeria is done with government money. So since we are entering an electoral season and subsidy is an issue, why don't you then increase the figure from 1.5 trillion to 3 trillion anyway? And then when you do that, you have an extra 1.5 trillion to spend on elections at different levels and buy the votes. So the government should come clean and explain to us why the figure has suddenly, when we had the money to import, double the number of cars. I know that instead of cars going up in number in my own family, cars have gone down because the ones that broke down, we could not either repair them or replace them. You get the point? So if we are not buying fuel anymore, for instance, all of this time they're complaining about petrol, scarcity, long queues. I don't bother about it because I don't have a functional car at this time. You get the point? My car is in the garage being fixed because the economy cannot support, the maintenance of cars. So where are the cars that we're buying this fuel inside? And how come the subsidy figures keep doubling on a daily basis?
Not a worry. Why is it that the governors in whose domain the ordinary Nigerians live and whose population feel the impact of any policy, any bad policy, are not complaining that the non-removal of subsidy is not making money available to them to run the life of the ordinary?
I've seen, thanks very much, Chief Njoku. That's an excellent question. But I've seen some feeble complaints, from the Nigerian Governors Forum. I read something, I think on Monday or Tuesday in the newspapers, about the Nigerian Governors Forum complaining that, the subsidy payments are shortchanging them and putting less money in their hands. It's neither here nor there, because at the end of the day, okay, you put more money in their hands. How does it translate to better life for the people actually? Most of that money will end up in security votes, which the governor pockets without having to account for it to anybody. You get the point? So at the end of the day, we are not even so sure when they are agitating for more resources and more funds, whether they want those money for themselves personally or they want it for the good of the people. You know what I mean? We run a near criminal enterprise in the way the Nigerian governance is done at different levels. Now, so that when a government official is agitating for something, you don't know whether that agitation is actually for himself or in the interest of the people. And in 98% of the time, it's actually in the interest of the personal interest of the people, of those in government. Because most of government budgeting actually goes to the individual government officials who are in power. What is the impact of the government budget last year on the average woman in my village or the man in my village? They don't care or know whether the government exists or not. You get the point? So year in, year out, when we do all these rituals of budgeting and National Assembly, those rituals are just self-seeking, for the National Assembly members who pad the budget anyway. They will pad it and pocket the money, and then and then every year we go through this round of rituals, budgeting and not budgeting and wasting everybody's time. At the end of the day, they clap for themselves that the budget has been passed and will be implemented without seeing any implementation that impacts the life of people. So we need to have a paradigm shift. We need to have a complete re-examination of the way we are governed. And I think the Nigerian public is extremely docile. They have to hold the people that are running the affairs of this country to account in a sustained and consistent way, so that they don't have a breathing space. Look at the frivolous, rather near frivolous harassment of the British Prime Minister over whether they had a party during COVID lockdown or not. That's such a serious issue that they even debate.
Humane and human.
They debate it at the national at their parliament. Here in this country, the president does something and you can ask him a question for what? The National Assembly will ask him to come and ask that question. He will ignore them and walk away, and nothing happens. We run a country that is not sustainable. The way we are going. And if we continue to run this way, honestly, we are going to, get to a point where we don't have anything to hand over to our children. I really feel worried for this country because of the level of incompetence, the level of deliberate ignorance, and the crass mischief that is used to collectively run the affairs of this country year in, year out. And we just hang in here. We have very brilliant people in this country who know exactly what to do. And then those who have seized the reins of power, hang in there. We pretend to be practicing a democracy where the voice of the people who actually cast the vote don't matter.
Well, it's our democracy, they say, is fledgling. They say we're just growing. But this afternoon, we're talking about the policy of retaining fuel subsidy. I've tried to reason that maybe the government is being considerate. But between politics and economy, which should be the government's greatest concern? I don't answer the question. Madaki says it should be economy and development. Subsidy doesn't answer to that. Subsidy wastes resource for that economy and for that development. And therefore, retaining it is a self-inflicted injury. In the past 35 minutes, 40 minutes, I've been conversing with Madaki Ame, a lawyer, an oil industry player, a consultant, and now putting his head into service. I have avoided using the word politics because each time I converse with Madaki, he says politics to him is only a means into service, and that he wants to show that service can be honorable and not to be despised by the people. Also, Nick Ajule tried to join us from Makodi in Benue State. We'll get part of what he said in the course of our putting this program together, but signal wasn't quite friendly. On your behalf and on my behalf, let me thank Madaki Ame for coming to this conversation. Madaki, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, Nick, wherever you are, even though your signal failed, you must thank you very much for making the effort to join us. This conversation never ends. As I promised you in the very first edition of this program for this year, we're bringing in stronger issues and more people of knowledge and more people of profile. Let's meet next Sunday. My name remains Mwaboze Njoku. Good afternoon. Well, penultimate Thursday, our sister program, Corruption Story, visited the junior secondary school, Mpape, a suburb of Abuja. They call it Maitama Extension. The visit was to inaugurate the first Corruption Story secondary school's anti-corruption club in Nigeria. It was an eye-opener on how young Nigerians are taking the anti-corruption issue very, very seriously. And correspondent, Corruption Story anchor Marvelous Obomano was with us, and now he tells us more.
Students of Junior Secondary School Mpape, Abuja have committed to ending corruption within their level and shun corrupt tendencies. The students made a pledge on Wednesday when Corruption Story, a program produced by Signature Television, supported and sponsored by MacArthur Foundation, paid a working visit to the school to officially inaugurate the Anti-Corruption School Club. The Anti-Corruption School Club is a school advocacy initiative of Corruption Story, which is sponsored by MacArthur Foundation to intensify efforts at getting students involved in the fight against corruption.
We are Signature Television. We are producers of Corruption Story, a TV program that focuses on anti-corruption. It is broadcast in Igbo language, Hausa, Yoruba, and Pidgin English. And this program is sponsored and supported by the MacArthur Foundation.
The Corruption Story team first paid a courtesy visit on the principal of the school, Yahaya Daudu, to intimate him on the reason for the visit.
Today we are here to interact more with the students and give them a token gift, some exercise books, about 300 or so exercise books, and then talk to them just a little bit.
The students who were excited at the visit of Corruption Story team rendered an anti-corruption song.
I have decided to show corruption. No turning back, no turning back. Are you a student? Avoid corruption. A civil servant? Avoid corruption. A politician? Avoid corruption. TV is watching you. Signature TV is watching you.
Corruption Tori is watching you. Corruption Tori is watching you.
The Chief Executive Officer of Signature Communication, producers of Corruption Tori, Vin Martin Obiora Ilo, while explaining the purpose of the visit and how corruption was affecting even Nigerian child, congratulated the school management and students for participating and coming third in the November 2021 Corruption Tori All Schools Essay Competition held in Abuja.
We are here to inaugurate the first in Abuja, the very first one in Abuja, of what we call Corruption Tori Anti-Corruption Club.
The school principal, Yahaya Daudu, promised to strengthen relationship between the school and Corruption Tori.
Performances is still in their memory and highly impressed. It is in view of this that they are here with us today to show us more appreciation.
In an interactive section, the students spoke about corruption and promised to get involved in the fight against corruption.
What can a child do and that will be corruption?
Examination malpractice. Stealing your parents' money.
Are we going to say no to corruption?
Yeah!
The chairman of the Parent Teachers Association of the school, Mohammed Kudu, in his remarks advised the students to take the anti-corruption message to their respective homes.
There's no need for you to do any exam cheating as from today. When you go to your houses, when you go your mommy, your auntie, you have to educate them.
The inauguration of Corruption Tori Anti-Corruption Club at the Junior Secondary School in Pape is one of the mechanisms initiated by the program to drive the anti-corruption message to Nigeria youth. In Abuja, Marvelous Obomman for Signature TV.
Well, thank you, Marvelous. From thank you to another thank you. But this time, to a man whose musical works was woven around the downtrodden, the hungry, and the poor. Oseloke Augustine Onwoboya from Delta State. He hit the Nigerian music scene with a reggae monster, Under Pressure. The album contained other unforgettable tracks such as Natty Got Jail and Arumba Style. Before then, Augustine Onwoboya, best known as Ras Kimono, was a member of the Jazz Sticks, a group that had subsequent superstars such as Magic Fashek and Black Rice. Ras Kimono, who played music in the reggae idiom, flew Nigeria's flag in the reggae community in the United States of America, in Europe, and across the African continent. For caring for the weak, the poor, and the downtrodden using music, Ras Kimono was honored with Nigerian Music Awards, Fame Music Awards, and many more. For his love, care, and music, we say thank you this Sunday to Ras Kimono.
Under pressure we will, under pressure. Under pressure black people, under pressure. Under pressure Nigerians, under pressure. Under pressure Africans, under pressure. No food, we belly. No money in our pocket. No bed, we ate. The people, they must suffer. In a ghetto, in a city, everywhere that we go. Me see them, some are cry, some are die, some are weeping, some are wailing. everywhere. Time we go under pressure we will, under pressure. Under pressure everybody, under pressure. Under pressure black and white, under pressure. Under pressure Europeans, under pressure. Can't get no food if you go feel with belly. Feel it with you too, no have no mother. Feel it with you too, no have no father. Feel it with you too, no have no brother. Feel it with you too, no have no sister. I'm a kimono, me just start chatting to you. Chanta this I want me not go chat it all day. Hey, under pressure we will, under pressure. Under pressure Europeans, under pressure. Under pressure Africans, under pressure. Under pressure Nigerians, under pressure.
And that's our package for this Sunday. My name never changes. It is Mwabuz and Jogo. Please join me same time next week. For now, enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon.